Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. It's really an honor to be able to speak with so many women who code members from all over the world. It's just kind of funny because hearing all of your introductions, I was like, who am I to be speaking to this group? And that's what I'm speaking on. So it just goes to show that, imposter syndrome is something that a lot of us experience even after we reach different levels of success. And that's one of the things that I noticed for myself. I started my business, Rosabella Consulting, 10 years ago, celebrating a decade in business this summer, which is exciting. And I, reached a level of success, and then I launched a book. I released a book and was talking to a woman that was visiting in my office. She was coming to visit my office mate, who happened to be my landlord. She was his mom with her niece, and they saw my book on the table, and I started talking to them about it. And her niece was like, "Oh, I want to buy this for my daughter. It's about being a misfit entrepreneur." And I was like, "Oh, well, people tell me that it's a good book about, finding your way in life in general." And this mom, older woman, says, "What do you know about finding your way in life? You're so young." So, it's funny, those times where we just can be, chopped down at the knees. It can happen so quickly. And even when you think once you reach this level of success, it won't happen, and then it still does. So that reminds me that, part of unlocking your innate wisdom and learning to trust yourself is finding ways to create spaciousness in moments where things just change on a dime, and we can go so quickly into, a shame spiral. And one of the ways that I find it helpful to create that spaciousness is to do heart-focused breathing. This is a technique developed by the Heart Math Institute. It's very simple. You can do it with your eyes open. It's an on-the-go technique. Really, all I ask you is you can get comfortable and close your eyes if you want to. I mean, do what feels right for you. I like to place a hand on my heart because that helps me to ground. And just take a deep breath in and out. Imagine that you are breathing in and out through your heart or chest area. Breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Find an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. And as you go about your day throughout this talk and the week to come, remember that you can do this technique at any point, at any time. Again, you can do it with your eyes open and just recenter and reground. And I can feel for myself, ooh, that helped. My heart was like kind of leaping out of my chest. And now it's not quite that, right, intensity. So if nothing else, hopefully you can walk away with that as a technique. And one of the reasons it's so powerful is because our hearts, we know through so much research now, our hearts really are the seat of wisdom. They really moderate so much of our physiology. Our hearts communicate more to our brain than vice versa. And so when our hearts are in coherence, which is what that heart-focused breathing helps us get into, we are able to regulate our whole body in sync, essentially. And it's like if our heart is the master conductor of our body, it's like the conductor's doing a great job and the orchestra is all in tune and playing in rhythm together. It just sounds beautiful. Whereas when our hearts are out of coherence, it's like having a drunk conductor. It is just not a pleasant sound to be listening to, and it just creates a lot of stress. And so much of these feelings of imposter syndrome and doubt are tied into past experiences, these emotional experiences that we've had in the past that really can lead to this, I feel out, something feels off, right? And so then our hearts kind of get out of coherence, they go into this stressed state, and our brains respond in this fear response. And we just go down this like negative Nancy rabbit hole. I'm sure you all can relate. And in fact, I want to create space and time in this talk today for you all to get to have some conversation and explore how these things of imposter syndrome and doubt show up for you. Because I find that it's something that when we experience it, we feel so alone. We feel like, gosh, there's something wrong with me and I'm the only one. And we don't feel like we can talk about it often, or what I've learned the hard way is if you don't talk about it in the right context and with the right people, can become really self-effacing. It can really jeopardize your abilities to succeed. People might look at you differently, like in a job interview, for example, might not be that place to share feelings of imposter syndrome or doubt. Or for me as a business owner, when I'm working with a potential client, that might not bode well. That's something I've learned the hard way. And so hopefully this is that space where we can, though, share, hey, this is something that we all experience and we aren't alone. And I think in these instances that sharing is a generous act. That when we can hear about those experiences from others, we relate, we gain inspiration, and we know we're not alone, and that really gives us fortitude to persevere. So I'd like to invite everyone to go into breakout rooms for a few minutes and just share, what type of situation have you experienced feelings of self-doubt or imposter syndrome? And I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, you're going to put that in the chat. I'm going to make 6 breakout rooms and we'll just be automatically assigned to them.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we can just take a few minutes. So like 3 or 4 minutes. Sound good?
Okay, sure. Maybe I'm not in a breakout room. Okay, also I failed to put myself in a breakout room. I think
You're
that
just
must
by
be a
yourself.
setting. I was just sitting here by myself for like 4 minutes.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I didn't know if we were supposed to close it ourselves or wait. I'm not good at
It
this.
kicks you out, but you
Okay.
can leave when it tells you, oh, you can leave.
Yeah, I was also there, but I couldn't talk actually, and then now I am here.
Oh,
Aw.
no. Okay. If you
Okay.
had any technical problems with that, please post in the chat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Ariana.
No worries. I also would love to just see in the chat if you're willing just to share, some of the things that you heard or that you shared in terms of where imposter syndrome comes up or feelings of self-doubt. I know, when I was preparing for this talk and I was thinking, okay, Ariana, tell a story, think of a story. And it quickly became a matter of not, what story to tell, but which one. There are just so many instances, where I've experienced that. And in the breakout room that I was in, one of the things we discussed is when we start to compare ourselves to others, and social media being one of those platforms technically, but also places where you see what other people are doing, and it can be easy to quickly just see the success that they're having and think you should be having it too, and there's something wrong with me, and why aren't I doing this, and I'm not good enough. And so that's definitely one of the places where I experience feelings of being an imposter and self-doubt. And I've also found through my own personal experiences that there are specific types of situations that are really triggering for me because they bring up old childhood trauma. And so one of those types of situations can ironically involve women networking groups, not women who code, obviously, but just like I've had some experiences with women that are like 10 to 15 years older than me, kind of discounting and belittling and shaming me. And that has really hurt because I was bullied in my childhood. From elementary school through high school by my best friend. We were like two peas in a pod when it was just the two of us. But then when we were at school and around other kids, I would get rejected and excluded quite often. And it was really traumatizing. I couldn't understand what was going on. And I felt like there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't cool enough. I didn't have the right clothes. I didn't say the right things. And so that, early childhood experience really ingrained within me, as it does for all of us. We are developing our nervous systems in early childhood and creating these patterns and complex frameworks within our bodies of identifying different stimuli and triggers that make us feel unsafe. And we go into a pattern threat response to preserve and protect our self-interests, And so that type of situation, a woman that's supposed to be a friend that excludes or humiliates me or rejects me is really triggering. And I was at a women's networking event a few years ago. It was a reunion event for this group I was a part of. And it had already been triggering before that event, but there were women I cared for and that were really supportive of me, and I knew they were going to be there. And I wanted to see them. I wanted to catch up. So I went. And the first part was this kind of organized conversation around what we were just up to, and talking about different ideas and challenges and how women can support women best. And I mentioned that I had recently read an article written in like the mid 1800s by a woman about how, the biggest impediment to women advancing is other women holding them back. And the woman that led this group just freaked out. Like she just started yelling and oh, that's a myth and we need to bust that myth and rah, rah, rah. And I was so humiliated. I completely just shut down. I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I ever say the right thing? Why aren't I cool? Why doesn't she like me? And I kept eyeing the door. I kept looking at the door and, planning my escape. And the meeting ended, and or that part of it, sorry, that part of it ended, and I could have left, but instead I gave myself permission to go to the bathroom and to just get a little bit of space. And while I was in the bathroom, I stopped being mean and questioning myself and doubting myself and started being nice to myself. And I did that first by naming what was going on. I'm triggered right now. You know, I'm in this pattern threat response. This is humiliating. This is reminding me of past pain. This isn't what's happening now. You know, really just recognizing that. And I interrupted the patterned reaction by taking some deep breaths. I just, you know, breathed in and out slowly. And then I interrupted it further by asking this question, because I was like, why doesn't she like me? What is wrong with me? And I asked, what if I don't like her? You know, I'm so worried about what she thinks of me and needing her approval. I didn't think about whether or not I liked her. And when I thought about it, and I kind of started to look at the evidence, I realized, you know, I don't like her behavior. I don't like the way she treated me. I don't think it was kind or fair. And when I looked at the evidence even more, I realized my self-worth and value as a person is not dependent on what she thinks of me, or what I've accomplished or what I've done. My self-worth and value is inherent in who I am. And the fact that I am alive and here and a person, it's just part of being human in my beliefs. And you know, I really, you know, shifted into that place. I was being so much more compassionate with myself, recognizing and communicating like it's okay. And I developed through my journaling practice this voice of compassion that speaks to me like I speak to my daughter who's 6 now. And I just, oh, sweetie. You know, which if other people said it was sweetie to me, I'd be like, oh, don't patronize me. But I can say I was sweetie to myself. It's totally okay. You know, oh, sweetie, it's okay. It hurts. And it's not personal. It's about her, not about you. So I shifted it. And because I felt so much better afterwards, I shifted from like this, I need to run. You know, I was like so in flight, like, which is what I normally would do in situations like that and have done time and time and time again in my life. I went back out into the group. And this is the best part. I went back out and I went to talk to one of the friends I was excited to see. And the woman that made those remarks that triggered me came up and started talking to us as well. And she goes, I'm so glad you're here, Ariana. Tell me what you're doing. And so I explained what I was working on at the time, which in case you haven't been able to pick up on, I'm certified in conversational intelligence, which is a framework based on the neuroscience of communication. And so I do a lot of leadership development and communication work with leaders and teams, helping them co-create positive change and, you know, navigate these pattern threat responses and rewrite them, repattern, as I like to say. And so she was really intrigued and she goes, can you come and present to this group that I run? We have about 30,000 members from all over the world. That opportunity never, ever would have happened, right? If I had listened to the fear, listened to my inner critic, which was trying to keep me safe, but was really just keeping me small. You know, and if I had listened and run away, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. And being mindful and intentional and really elongating that space of, I am not going to go into this shame spiral and this hating of myself. I am going to be nice by taking these 4 steps. has really helped me, because the triggers, they don't end. I mean, I get to a place where they're not so bad, and then something happens like, oh, I don't know COVID, and I can only ever do talks on a screen, and it's really awkward because I'm looking at my camera and I can't see any of you, you know, and suddenly it's triggering again. I see that there have been some things mentioned in the chat. Stephanie, I don't know if those are questions or comments that would be helpful to interject.
They were mostly comments. Bill has read to his son Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, the children's edition. And he recommended that from kind of like how to speak in the language of a group. And he has to go now, so he left. But that was the thing that he recommended. And then
Cool.
I said I liked your way of saying trying to keep me safe, but really just keeping me small. But I was going to raise my hand if I had the, I can't raise my hand because I'm in charge. So I just can talk whenever, like a rude person. But if I were going to raise my hand and talk, which I'm doing right now, is I was going to ask, okay, like you did that, but like, how did you get to the point where you're like, I can go to the bathroom and change how I'm thinking about things? Because that sounds really awesome.
Yeah. So as you know, Stephanie, so much of that for me has been about deepening my self-awareness. And, you know, one of the things that understanding these aspects of our shared humanity, that we are all hardwired to want to connect and belong, that the amygdala in the limbic section of the brain, which is kind of in the center of our brains, is constantly evaluating, like, do I fit in, don't I fit in? And when the amygdala senses something that feels unsafe, triggers a threat response. And that we don't have to go into a threat response. We can re-engage our executive brain. We can rewire our neural pathways, so that we, instead of going into a pattern threat response of like fight, flight, freeze, or there's a fourth one that a lot of people don't know, but it's especially challenging for women, which is appease. You know, that's saying yes to somebody's face and screaming, hell no. Right? It's a way we stay safe. And so, you know, being able to just like first create that awareness, like, oh, this is part of being a human. And when we start to learn these concepts and these ideas, we're giving permission to a little section of our brain in the back called the reticular activating system. We're saying to the reticular activating system, notice this. Notice this. Just like when you buy a new car and you start driving around, you're like, everybody here owns Subaru Outbacks. Like everybody in Colorado has been owning Subaru Outbacks since like they were invented. That's not new. You just happen to start noticing. And so that's a big part of it. And Portland. That's a big part of it, you know, is just like learning about these ideas and then inviting that permission to notice and then journaling about it. For me, is really helpful, because then in journaling, it helps me to slow down and pause. And when I can process something in retrospect and say, oh, I was triggered then, I start to lay the foundation for that repatterning work to be able to shift into a different way of showing up, so that I can recognize in the moment, oh, I was triggered. So it's just that awareness and recognizing it. And some of it is a part of this framework as well that I'll share. Was there anything else in the chat besides Portland being awesome as well? Okay. So this framework is about being nice to yourself. You know, you're not going to unleash your wisdom, your innate wisdom, by being mean. And I think that I know for myself and a lot of clients that I've worked with, we kind of tell ourselves a story that we need to motivate ourselves by being harsh or critical, or, you know, like judgy. Like that's part of how we need to motivate ourselves, but it's actually the opposite's true. And so being nice to yourself starts with naming it. Just name it in the moment, name what's going on. So in that story, I knew I was triggered. And so that was part of why I gave myself permission to go to the bathroom instead of run away. I was too kind of feeling closed in that moment to repattern based on where I was at in my journey in that setting. So I needed this space, that physical space, to be able to fully interrupt the pattern. But naming what's going on and then interrupting the pattern, you know, and reflecting for yourself. And this is again where journaling comes in super handy, is like, well, how might you interrupt your pattern? You know, like there's so many different ways you could interrupt it. What if you did, you know, practice different techniques or words that might allow you to create more space between your trigger and your reaction? And then really showing myself compassion, you know, shifting from that inner critic that's harsh to this voice of compassion, to really speaking to myself like I would to my daughter, someone I care for deeply, if they were going through the same thing, and reflecting on like, what does it look like and sound like and feel like to show yourself compassion? And then the other piece that I find really helpful, and this is again where like you start to document things in writing, it makes a difference. And for me, journaling is a great place to do that, is what does the evidence say? You know, because we have a tendency towards negativity bias. It's another part of our shared humanity where a negative experience or situation it like weighs on us with this heaviness and this disproportionate amount of focus compared to something positive. And so we will, you know, kind of blow it out of proportion. But when we step back and kind of look at, okay, well, what does the evidence say? Well, the evidence in that situation was that I didn't do anything wrong. It was her reaction that was problematic, and her reaction was indicative of her own patterns, right? She has a pattern threat response to the story of women hurting other women. My experience has been that that's happened. And because of that, I have my own pattern threat responses, right? When I feel rejected or excluded. But that wasn't the case for her. And so it was the opposite. So just looking at that evidence, and I've used that for rewriting stories in a broader sense about owning and recognizing my worth, my capability as a professional, to shift the story from like what's wrong with me to what am I doing well, and documenting like what's the evidence that I am doing well right now, or I am succeeding in my work or in my business, you know, and just writing out that evidence, and then you have it there for you to reference, and you're laying down that foundation. So yeah, does that help, Stephanie?
Yes, but I had a question, which is tips about interruption techniques.
Yeah, there's so many. So breathing is definitely a great one. You know, also just anything we can do to get into our physical body. So breathing is obviously one of those. And in addition to that, walking around, going for a walk, or just like moving, standing up. Like I have a sit-stand work desk. So even just that act of like sometimes standing up, like, okay, I'm moving my body, getting outside, can be another great way. Sometimes those things aren't as possible. So asking a what if question is really powerful. And that's the one I did in that story, right? What if I don't like her? Like that's when the story shifted, because I was still stuck in this, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't she like me? Why can't I be cool? Why don't I say the right thing? Right? I was so stuck in that loop. And so when I went into the bathroom, I asked, what if? I see that someone shared drinking water. Is it Shuko? Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yay, okay. Yeah, drinking water is a great one. And please do share, like, if you have other ideas. I have a client that who I worked with, a woman in technology that was like really struggling to find a job because she kept getting triggered when she go into job interviews, because she was not only a woman in tech, but she was middle-aged and a minority. And so she would go into these job interviews with these like young white men that would be doing these, Google-esque interview challenges, and just was so not her. And she just like went into this, I'm not good enough, I don't belong here. And so we worked together to shift her pattern in those instances. And one of the things that she found helpful in interrupting her pattern was to remind herself of a belief that gives her hope. And for her, it was, the universe always has an answer for me. And so she just, would remind herself that the universe always has an answer for me. The universe always meets my needs. And that helped her to interrupt the pattern, because that was a belief that she held dear and too close to her heart. Yeah. Are there other ideas that are coming out here too?
Yeah.
Nice. Oh yeah,
Standing
showers
in the grass. Like I guess that's like tactile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And temperature shifts.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, like really feeling the ground beneath your feet is super powerful. And similar to that too, anything that supports like a sensual experience, and by that I mean senses. And so aromatherapy can also be one technique. I have one client that found it really helpful, that she would light a candle before meetings that she knew were going to be triggering. And the scent of the candle was just like really grounding. And so anytime that there was something said, which always happened with like clockwork, she would, just focus on the scent of the candle. So that can also be a helpful technique too, is, a smell that feels good, or a sound. Like I use these finger symbols when I facilitate, and they sound beautiful. They just make me smile too. And so sometimes, like if I'm triggered and need to interrupt, I'll just be like bang bang. I mean, they don't sound bangy, but if I did it for you now, it would hurt your ears. So I would do that. Stephanie, did you want to share your?
Oh yeah, I didn't know, like we were talking about the interrupt part, and I had an idea about the evidence part, but I didn't know if we were going to talk more about other things before I could share my idea.
Yeah, please. I was going to give, if there's time, I was going to let everyone kind of go into a breakout and kind of talk about the different, what can you name, how might you interrupt, what would compassion look like, and what does the evidence say? So do you want to share that? And then we could do
Sure, that sounds great. So I do these weekly meetings with people on my team, and then once a month we talk about goals. And so with my newer junior hires, I think this is a great idea for everyone, but also particularly for juniors, because you just always feel like you don't know anything. The girl was like, what do I know about this project this month, right? And then next month, oh, like, what do I now know about this project? And then next month, what do I now know about this project? And like 6 months later, she's gone from like, I kind of understand this one small thing about this project, to I can complete a complex task in this project by myself without help. But like when we still talk one-on-one, she's like, I don't know anything, like still now. And so then I'm like, let's look at this 6 months of written down things, and so I think that is like super helpful to like write down where you are periodically.
I agree. Yeah. One of the things that I like to do as part of my planning is list out my accomplishments from the previous week. And that helps me have like a quick reference. Oh, I can look at that. I have all of this evidence. I did this. And it sounds like, a similar idea of like, what did I learn, this week? And, documenting that, writing those things down and then reviewing them and revisiting them is really important too, right? Like when you're especially repatterning and rewriting a story that is unhealthy and so deeply ingrained, like my experience from early childhood, that's a deep, like deeply etched. And so it just takes a little more time and effort to rewrite that response than it does for something that might be a newer cause of, those feelings of self-doubt. So I did put in the chat, and I see it looks like Runa just said something too. Do you want to share, Runa?
Yeah, so I was just listening to what you were talking about, and I think because I'm listening to it from hindsight, it is much, I suppose in some ways it's easier for me to see it. I don't think she was attacking you. I think she was, because maybe she is so passionate about bringing women together, maybe she had a negative I suppose she made a negative comment because she put so much time and effort into it. And that can happen to people. So, it's, yeah, as you said, it's not about you, but about her. And I think maybe, sometimes we have to give in to people, some when they're a little bit not very nice in the way they give feedback. It would be nicer if they said it in a nicer way, but all of us are so much have lack of resources in terms of time and energy. And then, every now and then somebody will say something that's not very nice in the tone. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think that it is, I agree, it's so much easier to recognize things in retrospect. And it does, I think, make a difference. When somebody does react, is usually, and reacts in a way with a harsh tone, it usually is more about their experience, than it is about you. But we tend to internalize things and take them personally.
So now we're going to go into the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I have some additional questions that I've tried to put in the chat a few times. I don't know if it worked, but you can just look at the NICE framework as well. And and just, what helps me sometimes is naming like not just what's going on, but like what are the sensations, the feelings, the thoughts that I'm experiencing. What is the trigger that's causing that? Like naming those pieces of it. And what's the story you're telling yourself, and also for interrupting it, we've gone over some of those ideas already. Yeah, and then the compassionate evidence. So yeah, whatever reflection questions, but I think we can take a few minutes. I don't know how much time there's left, Stephanie.
We have till 7:30, I believe,
okay,
so I'm not in a rush.
Okay, yeah. Cool. That's what was on my calendar, but I wasn't sure if I just blocked out extra time because I do that sometimes. So yeah, we can take like 10 minutes or so.
Okay, great. I don't know how to put myself in a breakout room. You
just join whichever one you want to.
Oh, okay. I can just do whatever. Okay, fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'll
when
go
you
ahead and open
make,
the links.
I'll stay on and won't join mine right away and I'll talk you through it, okay?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Hold on, I'm going to do this.
Okay, so do you see where breakout rooms is?
Mm-hmm.
So then you can like look at how they're all created, and you should be able to like scroll above any one of them and hit join.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder if, oh, I see. I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll join Christine because there's only 2 people on that one.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that's what I would
Cool.
usually do too. So see,
Awesome.
okay,
Okay.
I'll see you on the other side.
Okay.
what exactly happened?
I think we're back in the main session.
I'm not sure how we got back to, no, we're in a breakout room. I'm not sure how we got back into the breakout room, honestly.
Oh no, yeah,
Oh,
we
there.
are in the main session.
Okay, we're all back now, I think.
Sweet. I always come back muted.
Yeah, me too.
I would love to hear what came up for people if you want to share. I know there are some cool little insights and tidbits in the breakout room I was in.
At the very end in my breakout group, we were talking about journaling.
Thanks.
And I think like, well, first of all, some of the stories that we had shared were about processing things with other people as a way to like reflect and get that like compassion and some evaluation, I think, part of it. But journaling is almost another way of processing something with another person, which I think is kind of cool. Like, I don't know, that's all.
Nice.
I think that the evidence part is really helpful to me when I'm in like a cycle of doubt where I think like, okay, what are the like the hard facts of what's going on versus what is my interpretation of what I think someone said, or you know, their tone of voice, and that gets kind of tricky because there's definitely like microaggressions that are issues and like stuff like that. But I think for the most part, like you said, like talking it through with someone else and getting a little bit different perspective helps me give more of like the benefit of the doubt to the other person, to think like, okay, well, they said something which triggered me into like a spiral of doubt, but maybe that was more on them, or maybe I misheard, or maybe they really meant something totally different, but I took it, you know, in a way that was different than they meant. And so talking to people who are different than me helps with that kind of perspective shift, because they don't have the same triggers that I do. And it's a fine line, because sometimes that can be invalidating if you're talking to someone and they're like, that's not what that person meant, that's all on you, whatever, which isn't always helpful. But when you can do that internally, kind of like you said earlier, where like if someone called me sweetie, someone else called me sweetie, I'd be annoyed, but if I can say it to myself, then, you know, then that's compassionate. So case by case basis, and in situations of like high trust, where you can push back if you need to.
Yeah. I find too that there are sometimes those people that you can talk to that will just like get you fired up, and they're like, yeah, how dare they? And that doesn't that doesn't help either, you know. And when my husband and I are dealing with stuff, particularly like something that I find is very triggering is anything that happens that impacts how you feel in your own home. You know, and so like in our old house, like we were in a condo where people lived above us, and they would like throw things over the balconies, and and that's why you're dangerous. And it was very triggering, and so we would just like get each other fired up. And so, you know, it's one of the things that we now recognize, and we'll say to each other. It might be me saying it more of, I just feel like that this is a conversation of us getting each other really fired up now. Can we like take it down? Because that's not helpful. But what you described, Sarah, I like to call separating fact from fiction, you know, because we do have these like neurochemical reactions to stimuli that are instantaneous and lead to us feeling certain things, and then making stuff up and telling these stories and making these assumptions. And so that like there becomes all this fiction And so when you can kind of step back and be like, okay, here's the facts, here's the story, here's the fiction, here are the assumptions. It helps to just gain additional perspective. Yeah. Any other reflections? I see Emily typing some stuff. Yeah, other people can escalate our feelings for sure. Yeah, and the open communication makes a difference when we can have that with people, you know, and it's hard. Like I've been in situations where, you know, with someone I'd known for years, and I thought I could be open with her and say, hey, you know, when cause she was upset about something I said in a conversation, I was like, well, this is what triggered me. And she just like threw it back at me. She was like, that's projection, Ariana. Rah, rah, rah. It's like, I just told you like how that triggered this very personal trauma. And you're like attacking me with that now. That does not seem fair. And we're not friends anymore. It happens. So sweet. Well, it seems like, Emily, do you want to share? Do you want to speak, or are you more comfortable typing?
Oh no, I can speak.
Okay,
That's
cool.
fine. I love seeing all the animals through everybody's feeds. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Was it Sarah? Was it your cat that figured out the keyboard shortcut? Yeah, my cat's done things like that too, where I'm like.
And I've been seeing Stephanie's cat roll around in the box back there, and then I had a couple visitors. But one of the things that I noticed in the breakout room was that, both breakout rooms actually, is that there are so many people that have had similar or shared experiences, which is, it really helps me feel better about feeling that imposter syndrome kind of thing, because I know that I'm not alone. I know there's other people out there that are feeling the exact same thing for the similar reason that they've been triggered in that way, that they've had different traumas come back to the surface. And it's really nice to be able to meet other people and be able to say, yes, this has happened to me. We have this foundation, this basis, this shared experience, and it just gives a lot of validity to feelings, which is fantastic. And I think it kind of creates a safe space for discussion and gives a little bit more boost to the self-esteem to be able to vocalize things that are bugging you, or vocalize when you've got to take a step back and just think to yourself, is this actually happening, or is it just how I'm reacting to it, or what's going on in the situation? So it's awesome. I hate that so many people have experienced it, but I love to see that there's that connection available between everybody, because that way it gives us kind of a stronger front and we can help each other, you know, through the rough patches. But that's kind of what I noticed.
Oh, thanks for sharing, Emily. That's beautiful. And I agree. That's one of the reasons I love doing workshops and programs like this, because I don't think we talk about these things often enough. And I think a lot of it is because there aren't safe spaces to do it. You know, like you might have a conversation like I did with the friend of mine that I'm no friends with, and it ends up, you know, becoming a harmful dialogue instead of a healing one. And so, yeah, and that reminds me too of a practice that Pema Chodron teaches. It's called Tan Glen, where when you experience suffering and pain, you acknowledge that others are experiencing suffering and pain like you, and to carry that, and just like, it, for me, as someone that's always like, I want to help someone else, like acknowledging that others suffer like me gives me strength. Because then I'm like, I need to be there for them. It's not just me. Whereas when I feel so alone, it's like that, you know, the despair can build. And that's so much harder when despair becomes present. So. Yeah, and the looking for a new job and imposter syndrome. Yeah. It's so true. It really is. And you know, again, Ton Glenn, you're not alone. This is hard. And I like what Sarah said in my group, if I can pick on you first, like, oh, okay. You know, about when we, and to have a stress response, which these pattern threat responses are stress responses, right? We need to like let it physically go through us. Otherwise we like kind of stuff it in and then it comes out in our bodies in weird, unhealthy ways, like, you know, digestive problems, say. I might know something about that. And so like you need to like physically shake it out or dance or run or move, like just to kind of have that energetically like release from your body. And so recognizing when you do something like that, like you're looking for jobs all the time, or for me, I'm constantly looking for jobs. Like that's part of being self-employed. So it's like there's just this constant, you know, opportunity to go into that reaction. So it looks like there's some good topics coming up in the chat. Sarah was sharing the book that she got that insight from called Burnout. And Stephanie is happy to talk about being a junior and making those shifts. What a great group. I would love, as we wrap up, to hear if you would type in the chat, you know, what is one experiment you will do to apply what we discussed today? And I frame it as an experiment on purpose, because when something's an experiment, we give ourselves permission to maybe not get it perfect, maybe even get it wrong or fail, but it's about the learning that occurs. And so it might be an experiment that you do succeed at, and that's great. And, you know, we got to live and learn, we got to try new things. So what is one thing you will experiment with doing to apply, you know, the ideas, concepts, and practices that we discussed? Awesome. Yay, tracking what you've learned. Show compassion. Nice, more tracking lists. Yeah.
I just like to, I went to engineering college and that was really hard for me. And one of the things one of my professors told me was like, you know what you, like, you don't know what you don't know. And like, it might not even be what you learn, but you know more things that you don't know that you could write down. I would make a list of things I didn't know and it would increase every week. So it's like, that's also increasing.
Right, yeah. Well, and that's the cycle of learning too, right? You start off in unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. You know, and then you move to conscious incompetence, and that's kind of painful because you know all these things you don't know. And then you move to conscious competence, where you're, you know how to do it, but you have to think about doing it. And then unconscious competence, where you don't know what you know. And that journey, I think, especially in fields like technology, where A, things are always changing, and B, it's incredibly complex. That transition from conscious incompetence to unconscious competence is a long journey in a lot of ways. So nice. We have some more thinking about the evidence, tracking accomplishments. Yeah, sweet. Well, I appreciate you sharing. Oh, heart focused breathing, yay. That's a good one. Appreciate you sharing ideas about what to experiment, and by sharing them also with the rest of the group here, you're kind of building in a little bit of accountability for yourself if you want as well. So you all can check in with each other at the next Women Who Code meetup, or you know, just outside of the group as well, just to see how it's going. And you might also want to reflect again tomorrow. You know, sometimes we think on these things. I like to say that we're just planting seeds, you know, with all of these ideas and practices. And so you might want to revisit again tomorrow and see what comes up for you. there might be something where you're like, that's what I need to do. And I, just as a little kind of special offer for you, if anyone here is interested in unlocking your brilliance and really exploring journaling as a tool for helping you do that and creating the change you want. I have a special offer right now for a limited time. I have a journaling course that's normally $99, and you can sign up for it for free on the link that I just put in the chat. And so that's just a little gift for you all if you want to take advantage of that opportunity. And again, I think Stephanie mentioned in the beginning, I don't know how many of you are from other chapters in different parts of the country, but if you think that this would be a good topic to bring to your chapter, I would love to talk to you about that too. I can put my email in the chat as well. So. Oh, you weren't a huge journaler before, Stephanie? Oh, crazy.
No, because I wrote for a living. I'm like, I'm not gonna write after after work. I write all day.
Nice.
Yeah, people always think like I used to be a journalist. People always think journalists like really like to write, but it's like, yeah, if you do it all day, then you don't want to do it when you go home.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, it was great having all of y'all come. We hope to see you again. And yeah, everyone have a great evening or morning, depending on where you are. Yeah.
Is Women Who Code all over the globe?
Yeah, we
In
are.
other countries? Okay.
Yeah. So they have chapters like all over the world.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yay, awesome. Well, thank you again for sharing your time with
If you
me.
do want a copy of the recording or know someone who might, you can let me know and I'll try to get it to you as well. So, okay, I'm gonna stop recording now.